I watched Marcus pocket my car keys with that same sheepish smile he'd used 1,000 times before. The smile that said, I know this is wrong, but you love me, so you'll forgive me. Babe, I promise I'll make this up to you, he said, already backing toward the door of our apartment. Jen's surgery can't wait. The doctor said if we don't do it this week, the tumor could become inoperable. You understand, right? I understood perfectly. I understood that in my first life, I'd screamed at him when he asked to sell my 1967 Shelby GT 500. I'd fought him for 3 days straight, thrown his clothes on the lawn, threatened divorce. And he'd cried. God, how he'd cried, telling me I was heartless, that I cared more about a car than his sister's life. So I'd relented. I'd signed the papers. I'd watched him drive away in my father's last gift to me, the car Dad had restored with his own hands before the cancer took him. The car worth $500,000 that Marcus sold for $50,000 to his buddy Rick, who needed to move it quick for the surgery money. Jen had her surgery. She recovered beautifully. And 6 months later, I found out Jen's tumor had been benign. The surgery was elective, optional. And the real reason Marcus needed money wasn't medical bills. It was because he'd been draining our accounts to fund his other life. The one with Jen, not his sister, his girlfriend. They'd been together since before he met me. He'd courted me for my money, married me for my father's connections, and bled me dry for 3 years while playing devoted husband. When I finally discovered the truth, when I found the apartment lease with both their names, the vacation photos, the engagement ring he'd bought her with my inheritance, I confronted them. Marcus didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. You were always so cold, Sarah, he'd said, like my lack of enthusiasm for being defrauded was a personality flaw. Jen actually needs me. I filed for divorce. But Marcus had been smart. He'd moved money, hidden assets, made sure everything was in his name or lost in bad investments. My lawyer said I might get 20 cents on the dollar after legal fees. The Shelby was long gone. Rick had flipped it for $480,000, and Marcus claimed he'd been scammed, had no idea of its value. I fought for 2 years. The stress triggered a heart condition I didn't know I had. One night, arguing with Marcus's lawyer over the phone about the 4th delay in mediation, I felt my chest tighten. The pain spread down my arm. I couldn't breathe. I died alone on my kitchen floor at 32 years old, thinking about how my father would be ashamed that I'd let his gift be stolen. How I'd wasted years fighting a man who never loved me. How I'd never gotten justice. And then I woke up. I woke up in my bedroom, our bedroom, 3 years earlier on a Tuesday morning in March. Marcus was beside me, snoring softly, his phone buzzing on the nightstand with what I now knew were texts from Jen. The Shelby was in the garage, untouched. My father had been dead for 6 months, and the inheritance check had just cleared. The first time around, I'd thought the disorientation was grief. This time, I knew better. I was 30 years old again. I had 2 years before Marcus would ask to sell my car. 2 years to prepare. And God help me, I was going to make him beg to take it. The first few weeks after my rebirth were surreal. I kept expecting to wake up in my old life, in the shabby apartment I'd moved to after the divorce, with my failing heart and empty bank account. Instead, I woke up next to Marcus every morning, watching him sleep and cataloging all the little details I'd missed the first time. The way he angled his phone away from me when texting, the work dinners that always ran late on Wednesdays, the night Jen had off from her nursing job, the expensive cologne I thought he bought for me, but that I now realized matched the scent on Jen's Instagram photos. I'd been so stupid, so trusting. Not this time. I played the part of devoted wife perfectly. I smiled when Marcus came home late. I believed his excuses. I even suggested he visit his sister more often. Knowing he was spending those weekends with Jen in the apartment I'd eventually discover, I needed him comfortable, complacent. Most importantly, I needed him to think I was still the same Sarah, soft, naive, and desperately in love with him, but I was busy. I started with documentation. Every text I could access, every receipt, every late-night phone call, I set up cloud backups he didn't know about. I installed software on our shared laptop that tracked his activity. Within 3 months, I had a digital paper trail of his affair that would make any divorce lawyer salivate. But divorce wasn't enough. Not anymore. I'd already lived through that hell, and I knew how it ended. With me broke and broken while Marcus started fresh with Jen. He'd probably even keep some of my inheritance tied up in joint investments that somehow only he could access. No, this time I wanted more than separation. I wanted devastation. I wanted him to lose everything, the way he'd taken everything from me, and so I made a plan. A beautiful, terrible plan that would take 2 years to execute. And it all centered on my father's car. I spent the next 18 months building my fortress. First, money. I started siphoning cash from our joint accounts. Nothing large enough to notice, but steady. 500 here, 1,000 there, always under the guise of shopping or home expenses. I opened a separate bank account Marcus didn't know about at a different bank under my maiden name. By the end of the first year, I had $127,000 squirreled away. Second, allies. I reconnected with my father's old friends, the ones Marcus had slowly isolated me from. Frank Delacroix, who owned 3 luxury car dealerships and had taught my father everything about classic cars. Maria Chen, who'd worked as my father's paralegal and now ran her own law firm specializing in asset protection. Thomas Wright, my father's best friend, who happened to be a private investigator. I told them everything, showed them everything. They'd loved my father, and they'd watched Marcus charm his way into my life with the kind of suspicion only people who truly cared about me could feel. They'd been right to worry, and now they were ready to help. Third, the car itself. I had the Shelby appraised properly. Not by Marcus's buddy who'd do him favors, but by 3 independent experts Frank recommended. The car was worth $520,000, maybe more to the right collector. I had every inch of it photographed, documented, and verified. I registered it in my name only, made sure the title was ironclad, and put it in a trust that Frank helped me establish. The Marcus Montgomery Memorial Trust, I called it. A private joke that made me smile every time I thought about it. Fourth, and most importantly, I prepared for the surgery scam. Because I knew it was coming, I'd lived through it once, and Marcus was nothing if not predictable. In my first life, Jen's tumor had appeared in March of our 3rd year of marriage. We were right on schedule, so when Thomas confirmed that Jen had indeed scheduled a consultation with an oncologist, the same one from my first life, I knew the endgame was starting. I just had to make sure this time I controlled how it ended. Sarah, we need to talk. Marcus found me in the garage on a Saturday afternoon, where I was sitting in the Shelby. I'd been coming here a lot lately just to sit in the driver's seat and remember my father. Remember the Sundays we'd spent restoring this beauty, his patient hands teaching mine how to handle a wrench, how to treat machinery with respect. What's wrong? I asked, knowing exactly what was wrong. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, his tell when he was about to lie. It's Jen. God, Sarah, I don't even know how to say this. Is she okay? I made my voice tight with concern. No, she's not. He leaned against the workbench, and I watched him arrange his face into an expression of devastated worry. He'd practiced this. She found a lump, went to the doctor, and they did a biopsy. Sarah, it's cancer. I gasped right on cue. Oh my God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. The doctors want to operate as soon as possible, but he trailed off, looking at the Shelby with an expression I now recognized as calculation disguised as desperation. Her insurance won't cover all of it. I've been trying to figure out how to get the money, but we're tapped out. The medical bills alone are going to be over $100,000. Here it comes, I thought. I know this is insane, Marcus continued. I know how much this car means to you, but Sarah, she's my sister. She's only 28. If we don't do this surgery, he let his voice break. I can't lose her. I sat in silence watching him. In my first life, this was where I'd exploded, where I'd screamed that the car was all I had left of my father, that Marcus had no right to even suggest it, where I'd made him work for it, made him grovel and guilt me for days until I finally broke. This time, I just asked quietly, how much do you need? Marcus blinked, clearly thrown by my lack of resistance. The surgery and treatment will cost around $80,000 out of pocket. I know the Shelby is worth way more than that to you emotionally, but if we could sell it... Okay. And I promise I'll buy you another car, something nice, and we'll. Wait, what? I turned to look at him, letting tears fill my eyes. Real tears, but not for the reason he thought. I said, okay. If it'll save Jen's life, sell the car. Sarah, He actually looked uncomfortable, like my immediate agreement had thrown off his script. Are you sure? I know how much your dad. My dad would have understood, I interrupted. He always said family comes first, and Jen is family. I reached out and took Marcus's hand, squeezing it. We'll get through this together. The relief on his face was almost comical. God, I love you. I promise, baby, I will make this up to you. As soon as Jen is better, I'll find a way to get you another classic car or... Don't worry about that now, I said softly. Just focus on your sister. Do whatever you need to do. He kissed me, deep and passionate, probably thinking about how easy this had been. How lucky he was to have such a stupid, loving wife. I'll call Rick tomorrow. He knows a collector who might be interested in buying it quick. Rick? I frowned slightly. Doesn't he usually deal in modern cars? He's got connections in the classic market, too, Marcus assured me. Don't worry, I'll make sure we get a fair price. A fair price, right. I watched him leave the garage, already pulling out his phone. To call Jen, I knew. To tell her the mark had fallen for it again. That they'd have their money in a week. I sat in my father's car a moment longer, running my hands over the steering wheel. Just a little longer, Dad, I whispered. Then I'll make him pay for everything. The sale happened fast. Too fast if I'd been the naive woman from my first life. But I'd learned to recognize a con when I saw it. Rick found a buyer within 48 hours. A collector who was very interested, but needed to move quickly because he was leaving the country next month. The buyer offered $50,000 cash, firm, take it or leave it. I know it's lower than you hoped, Marcus said, holding my hands across our kitchen table. But Sarah, Jen's surgery is scheduled for next week. We don't have time to wait for a better offer. It's fine, I told him. Really, as long as it helps Jen. I signed the papers that afternoon, watched Marcus and Rick load the Shelby onto a trailer, felt Marcus's arms around me as I cried into his shoulder, mourning my father's car. I'm so sorry, baby, he murmured into my hair. I know how hard this is. He had no idea. The money hit our joint account the next day, all $50,000 of it. And the day after that, $65,000 disappeared, transferred to an account I wasn't supposed to know about. The account Marcus shared with Jen. I'd seen it all in my first life when my lawyer finally got the subpoena. This time, I was watching it happen in real time. Thomas's tracking software giving me a front row seat to every transaction. Marcus thought he was so clever. He'd told me the surgery and hospital costs came to $50,000 total, which was why the car money was exactly enough. In reality, Jen's surgery, the elective removal of a benign tumor, cost $8,000, covered mostly by her insurance. She paid $800 out of pocket. The other $64,200 went straight into their shared nest egg. Money they were saving for after Marcus divorced me. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I made dinner and asked Marcus how Jen was doing. Scared, he said, playing with his food, but trying to stay positive. The surgery is Thursday morning. I was thinking I'd take the day off to be with her. Of course, I said. She needs you. What I didn't say. I know you'll spend Thursday at the apartment you share with her, celebrating your latest theft. I know you'll sleep with her in the bed you bought with my inheritance. I know you'll laugh about how easy it was to manipulate your stupid wife out of $500,000. What I didn't say, Thursday is also when Maria files the paperwork that will destroy your entire life. I didn't go to work Thursday. Instead, I met Maria at her office at 9 a.m. sharp, dressed in my best suit and carrying a folder 2 inches thick. You're sure about this? Maria asked, though her eyes gleamed with the kind of predatory satisfaction that made her an excellent lawyer. I've never been more sure of anything. She smiled. Then let's burn his life down. The paperwork had been ready for weeks. We were just waiting for Marcus to complete the fraud. Now that he had, we could move. First, the criminal complaint. Theft by conversion, criminal fraud, forgery. See that title Marcus had signed? The one transferring the Shelby to Rick? It wasn't valid because the car didn't belong to our marital estate. It belonged to the Marcus Montgomery Memorial Trust, a private trust I'd established in my name alone, with my father's estate lawyer as the trustee. Yep, Marcus had forged my signature on a document transferring property he didn't own. That was a felony. Second, the divorce filing. Maria had crafted it beautifully. Every text message, every photo, every receipt from Marcus and Jen's relationship, every transfer of marital assets to their private account, every lie he'd told about work expenses and business trips. We had it all documented and notarized. I was asking for everything: full return of my inheritance, all marital assets, the apartment, which was in my name anyway, though Marcus had convinced me we co-owned it, and punitive damages for fraud. Third, and most satisfying, the civil suit against both Marcus and Rick for conspiracy to commit fraud and conversion of stolen property. Because Rick wasn't some innocent middleman. He and Marcus had planned this together. I had the text messages to prove it. They deliberately lowballed the car's value, split the difference when Rick flipped it, and planned to split the profits later. In my first life, I'd never been able to prove it. This time, Thomas's surveillance had caught them celebrating at a bar the night of the sale, drunk and bragging about that stupid bitch who'd handed over a $500,000 car for pennies. Thomas had video. He had audio. He had them dead to rights. "The police will pick Marcus up this afternoon," Maria said, checking her watch. "I've coordinated with the DA's office. They're treating it as a priority given the amount involved." "And the car?" "Frank's already on it. He tracked down the collector who bought it from Rick. Turns out he's a client of Frank's dealership. Once we explain the situation and show him the documentation proving it was stolen property, he'll return it. He's not happy about losing the money, but he's got lawyers too. He'll sue Rick for fraud." Everything was falling into place like dominoes. "There's one more thing," I said quietly. I pulled out another folder, a thinner one. "I want you to send this to Jen." Maria opened it and read the first page. Her eyebrows rose. "Medical records?" "From her surgery. The real diagnosis. Benign tumor, elective procedure, total cost after insurance. $800. I smiled thinly. "I want her to know that I know. I want her to understand that every lie, every manipulation, every time she played the dying sister, I saw through all of it." "This is almost cruel, Sarah." "Good," Maria laughed, sharp and approving. "All right then, let's serve some papers." I was home when they arrested Marcus. I'd positioned myself in the living room with a book, waiting. I wanted to see his face. He came through the door at 2:47 p.m., whistling. He'd texted me earlier that the surgery had gone well and he'd be home late because he wanted to stay with Jen during recovery. Translation: he'd be at their apartment, probably in bed with her, celebrating their latest score. He made it 3 steps into the living room before he saw the 2 police officers standing in our kitchen. "Marcus Montgomery?" the older officer asked. "Yes? What's going on?" Marcus looked at me, confused. "Sarah, what?" "Mr. Montgomery, you're under arrest for theft by conversion, criminal fraud, and forgery." The officer stepped forward with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." I watched the color drain from Marcus's face as they read him his Miranda rights. Watched him look from the officers to me and back again, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Sarah," his voice cracked. "What is this? What's happening?" I stood up slowly, setting down my book. "The Shelby wasn't yours to sell, Marcus. It was held in trust. You forged my signature. That's a felony." "What?" "No, you signed the papers. You said—" "I signed papers for a car I owned personally. You transferred a car from a trust you had no authority over. That's theft." I walked closer, keeping my voice calm. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice you stole $500,000 from me? I didn't steal anything. I sold it for $50,000 for my sister's surgery. Your girlfriend's elective surgery for a benign tumor that cost $800. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. A photo of him and Jen kissing in front of their apartment. "I know everything, Marcus. I've known for months." His face went white, then red, then white again. "You? How? How did I know?" Or how did I prove it? I tilted my head. Because unlike you, I'm not an idiot. Every text message, every transaction, every lie you've told for the past 2 years, I have it all documented. You're not just losing the car, Marcus. You're losing everything. You can't do this. He tried to pull away from the officers, but they held him firm. Sarah, please, we can talk about this. We're done talking. You're also being served with divorce papers. I'm taking the apartment, the cars, every penny of my inheritance you tried to steal, and I'm suing you for fraud. Oh, and Rick, too. Hope he saves some of that money he made flipping my car because he's going to need it for legal fees. Sarah, baby, please. Marcus was begging now, tears streaming down his face. The same tears he'd used to manipulate me into giving up my father's car. I love you. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. No, I said simply. We can't. Because you didn't make a mistake, Marcus. You made 1,000 deliberate choices to betray me, to steal from me, to lie to my face every single day, and I'm done. I watched through the window as they put him in the police car. Watched it drive away. Then I sat down on my couch, picked up my phone, and called Frank. It's done, I said when he answered. Good. I could hear the smile in his voice. Your dad would be proud, Sarah. I thought about my father, about the hours we'd spent in the garage, his patient hands teaching me about engines and restoration and the importance of doing things right, about the pride in his eyes when we'd finally finished the Shelby together. Yeah, I said softly. I think he would be. The next 72 hours were chaos. Marcus made bail, $50,000 paid by his mother, which cleaned out most of her savings. He immediately called me, threatening, pleading, bargaining. I let all his calls go to voicemail and forwarded them to Maria, who added them to our evidence file as witness intimidation. Rick tried to run. Thomas caught him at the airport with $200,000 in cash, trying to board a flight to Mexico. That added felony flight to avoid prosecution to his charges. The DA was thrilled. The collector who'd bought the Shelby, a nice older gentleman named Harold Chen, no relation to Maria surprisingly, returned the car personally, driving it to Frank's dealership for safekeeping. He was furious with Rick and planning his own lawsuit. He even apologized to me, which I thought was sweet but unnecessary. Your father did beautiful work, he said, walking around the Shelby with reverent appreciation. This is a masterpiece. I'm sorry it got tangled up in all this ugliness. Thank you for returning it, I said. I know you lost money. I'll get it back from that thieving bastard, Harold said cheerfully. My lawyers are very good. But the best part, the part I'd been waiting for, came on Saturday morning. Jen showed up at my apartment. I watched her through the door camera, debating whether to answer. She looked awful, hair unwashed, makeup smeared, wearing sweatpants and a tank top. She'd been crying. Finally, I opened the door. You bitch, she spat. Good morning, Jen. How's your recovery going? That tumor must have really taken it out of you. Her face went red. You know damn well there was no tumor. You're destroying Marcus's life over a car. Over $500,000 in theft and 2 years of adultery, I corrected. The car just happens to be worth $500,000. He loves me, Jen's voice cracked. We're in love, Sarah. He was going to leave you anyway. With my money, you mean? With the inheritance he systematically stole from me while playing devoted husband. I leaned against the door frame. Tell me, Jen, when exactly were you going to come clean about the cancer? After the wedding? Or were you planning to milk that sympathy for a few more years? She flinched. The doctors said it could have become cancerous. It was benign, the surgery was elective, and it cost $800, not $80,000. I smiled coldly. I sent you the medical records. I know you got them. Did you show them to Marcus? Does he know you lied to him too? I didn't lie. He let him believe you were dying so he'd steal from his wife to fund your lifestyle? I shrugged. That's not love, Jen. That's being a con artist. You two are perfect for each other. He's going to prison because of you. Jen was shouting now, tears streaming down her face. 20 years, his lawyer said. 5 to 7, more likely, if he takes a plea deal. And that's just for the felony theft. The civil suits will take everything else. I straightened. Here's the thing, Jen. You and Marcus thought I was stupid. You thought I was weak. You thought you could take everything from me and I just. What? Move on? Find another car? Find another husband? Pretend it never happened? We didn't mean to hurt you. Yes, you did. You absolutely did. My voice went hard. You looked at me and saw a mark, an easy target. Someone whose grief you could exploit, whose love you could weaponize, whose trust you could betray for profit. And you were right. For a while, I was that person. But not anymore. Jen was crying harder now, mascara running down her cheeks. Please, Sarah. Please, if you drop the charges, Marcus and I will disappear. We'll leave the city. We'll never contact you again. No. You don't understand. His life is ruined. Good. The word came out sharper than I intended. That's the point, Jen. He ruined my life. He stole from me, lied to me, betrayed me in every way a person can be betrayed. And you helped him do it. You benefited from it. So, no, I'm not dropping anything. I'm going to watch him face every single consequence of his actions, and I'm going to smile while I do it. You're a monster, Jen whispered. No, I said quietly. I'm just not a victim anymore. I closed the door in her face. The trial took 9 months. Marcus's lawyer tried everything, claiming I'd given verbal permission, that the car sale was a gift to help family, that the affair wasn't relevant to the theft charges. Maria dismantled every argument with surgical precision. The jury took 40 minutes to convict him on all counts. He got 6 years in state prison. Rick got 8. He had priors plus the attempted flight. The judge was not sympathetic. The civil suits took longer, but I won those too. The court ordered Marcus to pay back the $520,000 value of the car, plus punitive damages for fraud, plus my legal fees. His parents had to sell their house to cover part of it. Rick lost everything, his business, his car collection, his marriage. Jen wasn't charged criminally. Being a mistress isn't illegal, and I couldn't prove she knew about the forged documents. But she lost Marcus, her $64,200 surgery fund, and her job when her nursing supervisor found out she'd lied about having cancer to get time off. I heard through mutual friends that she moved back home with her parents in Indiana. Good riddance. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks after Marcus's sentencing. I kept the apartment, the remaining marital assets, and full restitution rights for my inheritance. Marcus left prison with nothing but debt and a felony record, and me, I got my car back. Frank had kept it safe at his dealership during the trial, giving it a full service and tune-up on the house. When everything was finally settled, he called me to come pick it up. I drove it home on a Saturday afternoon, the engine purring like a satisfied cat. I parked it in my garage, my own garage, in my own house, bought with money Marcus could never touch, and just sat there for a while, hands on the steering wheel. I got it back, Dad, I said out loud. Took me 2 lifetimes, but I got it back. Somewhere, I like to think he was proud. The second chance at life didn't end with Marcus's conviction. That was just the beginning. With the legal battles behind me and my finances finally secure, I started to actually live. I got therapy, real therapy, to process the trauma of betrayal and the strangeness of living the same years twice. I reconnected with old friends Marcus had isolated me from. I traveled to places I'd always wanted to see but never had time for. And I learned to trust again, slowly, carefully, but genuinely. It started with Frank, actually. Not romantically, he was happily married and 20 years older besides. But he became a mentor and friend. He taught me the classic car business, let me work at his dealership on weekends, showed me how to spot a restoration project versus a money pit. You've got your father's eye, he told me once, watching me evaluate a 1969 Camaro that someone wanted to trade in. That's a rare gift. Through Frank, I met other collectors, other enthusiasts, people who understood that a car could be more than transportation. It could be art, history, a connection to someone you'd lost. I started buying and selling classics on the side, building a reputation for fair dealing and expert knowledge. It turned out I was good at it. Really good. Within a year, I'd made back everything I'd spent on legal fees and then some. Within 2, I'd opened my own small showroom specializing in American muscle cars. Within 3, I was featured in Classic Car magazine as one of the rising stars in vintage automotive sales. The Shelby sat in my showroom, in a place of honor under custom lighting. Not for sale, never for sale, but on display because it deserved to be seen and appreciated. I put a small plaque beside it. 1967 Shelby GT 500. Restored by James Montgomery and his daughter Sarah. Some things are priceless. I was at the showroom on a Tuesday afternoon, going over inventory with my assistant Claire, when the bell over the door chimed. I looked up and felt my stomach drop. Marcus stood in the doorway. He looked terrible. Prison had not been kind to him. He was thinner, grayer, with new lines around his eyes and mouth. He wore cheap clothes and carried himself with the defeated slump of someone who'd lost everything. It had been 4 years since his sentencing. He must have gotten out early for good behavior. "Sarah?" he said quietly. Can we talk?" Claire looked at me, tense. She knew the whole story. I'd been open about it with my employees, figuring they deserved to know why their boss was so particular about background checks and financial transparency. "It's okay," I told her. "Give us a minute." She left reluctantly, but I saw her station herself just outside, where she could see through the glass, ready to call the police if needed. I appreciated that. "What do you want, Marcus?" I kept my voice neutral, professional. I wanted to... He swallowed hard. "I wanted to apologize for everything. I know it doesn't change anything. I know it's too late. But I needed you to know that I understand what I did was wrong." I studied him, looking for the manipulation, the angle. But all I saw was a broken man who'd had 4 years in prison to think about his choices. "Okay," I said. "I accept your apology." He blinked like he'd expected me to yell, to throw him out. Maybe a part of him wanted that, wanted the confrontation, the drama, something that felt like I still cared enough to be angry. "I saw the magazine article," he continued, "about your business. You're doing really well." "I am." "And the Shelby?" He looked at the car, something complicated crossing his face. "I'm glad you got it back. I'm glad it's here." "Me too." We stood in awkward silence for a moment. Marcus seemed to be struggling with what to say next. Finally, "I know I don't have the right to ask, but are you happy?" I thought about it, really thought about it. About my business, my friends, my little house with its garage where I could work on cars on the weekends. About the trips I'd taken, the freedom I'd built, the life I'd reconstructed from the ashes of his betrayal. About the fact that I'd died once, miserable and alone, and been given the impossible gift of a second chance. And I hadn't wasted it. "Yes," I said simply, "I'm happy." Marcus nodded slowly. "Good, that's good." He turned to go, then paused. "For what it's worth, Jen and I aren't together anymore. Haven't been since the trial. Turns out when things got hard, we weren't as in love as we thought." "I could have told you that," I said dryly. He laughed, bitter and short. "Yeah, I guess you could have." He headed for the door, then looked back one last time. "I really am sorry, Sarah. I hope someday you can forgive me." I watched him leave, watched him walk down the street and disappear into the crowd. Did I forgive him? I didn't know, maybe someday. Or maybe not. Maybe forgiveness wasn't the point. The point was that I'd survived. I'd fought back. I'd reclaimed not just my car, but my life, my power, my sense of self-worth. The point was that Marcus had tried to break me, and instead, I'd broken free. That evening, after closing the showroom, I sat in the Shelby and just breathed. The leather seats smelled like the oil and polish I used to maintain them. The steering wheel fit my hands perfectly, worn smooth by years of my father's grip and now mine. I thought about the woman I'd been in my first life, trusting, naive, so desperate to be loved that I'd ignored every red flag. I thought about the woman I'd been when I woke up with a second chance, angry, calculating, focused entirely on revenge. And I thought about who I was now. Someone who'd learned to be cautious without becoming cynical, strong without becoming cruel, successful without becoming hard. Rebirth hadn't just given me another chance at those 2 years. It had given me permission to become someone new. My phone buzzed. A text from Maria. "Dinner Friday?" My treat. Want to celebrate the Morrison estate sale. The Morrison estate, a collection of 5 vintage cars I'd helped broker for a client. My biggest commission to date. I texted back, "Absolutely. 7 p.m.? Another buzz, this time from Frank. "Found a 71 CUDA that might interest you. Owner's motivated. Want to take a look Saturday?" Definitely, I replied. Morning works. One more text from Claire. Boss, you okay? That guy seemed intense. I smiled. I'm fine. Thanks for having my back. Always. I sat there a moment longer, surrounded by the car my father had built, in the business I'd built, in the life I'd built from the ruins of betrayal. Then I turned the key. The Shelby's engine roared to life, powerful and perfect, and I drove home, windows down, music up, the wind in my hair, and the whole future ahead of me. Some things I'd learned are worth fighting for. Some things are worth coming back from the dead for. And some things, the things that really matter, are absolutely, completely priceless.